Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavanscha. I have been dragged helplessly to the lotus feet of all of you. So I am happy and grateful to Maharaj for this good fortune, this beautiful Golokadam, the home of Sri Sri Radha Madan Mohan, where the mercy of Srila Prabhupada is so nicely manifesting through the devotional service of all of you devotees. It is really a great fortune and very inspiring to the heart to have the opportunity to meet you again. Although outside it is really cold and full of ice and snow, the warmth of the affection of the Vaishnavas can relieve one of all the miseries of material existence. And since my heart is very cold like ice and hard like stone, Srila Sachinanda Maharaj has so expertly brought me to you so that I can also melt and become perhaps a little Krishna conscious. Hare Krishna. So, when we give our word to a devotee, the honor of that word is more precious than our life. Srila Rupa Goswami has explained how important it is to have very straightforward and honest dealings with Vaishnavas. With everyone, actually, but especially with devotees. And we should never be whimsical with devotees. We should always take very seriously what has been spoken, what is being spoken, and what will be spoken. Because if we do not live up to our words to the Vaishnavas, if we do not fulfill our promises to the Vaishnavas, then we will not please Krishna. Sometimes we take relationships with devotees to be something ordinary. But Srila Prabhupada has quoted from Shastra that if one sees the deity as made of stone or wood, if one sees the Guru as an ordinary person, or if one sees a Vaishnava to be within the categories of any material designations, according to his past or her past birth or social environment, then one's intelligence is hellish. Sometimes we joke about devotees, about their past, or about their race, or about their past religion, or about the color of their skin. This should not be. This is actually offensive. To think of a devotee according to ordinary material designations and not see that they are transcendently situated as the eternal servants of Krishna is not pleasing to Lord Krishna. In fact, it is hellish mentality. So similarly, in our dealings with devotees, although they should be blissful and joyful, full of life, still we should take very seriously what is spoken, especially what we are speaking. So last night, I promised Dayasindhu Prabhu that if he came to Goloka Dham, I would speak about the holy place called Srikhanda. And although I am not prepared to speak, if I do not, I will make an aparad. So I have to say something. Hare Krishna. Because we had a nice yatra to Mayapur, and some of the German devotees became very sick with car sickness. So they did not go to Srikhanda. So I'd like to speak something about this very holy place, with your permission. Srikhanda, there are many wonderful holy places in this village. How many of you have been there? Please raise your hand. It's about 2 hours by road from Mayapur. However, the road was closed, so it took us 10 hours. Hare Krishna. Srikhanda is the place of Lochan Das Thakur, where he wrote the Sri Chaitanya Mangal. And something we can say about that, Lochan Das, he was born in a village nearby, and when he was just a very, very young boy, his mother and father got him married. And his wife was even younger than him. So then what happened is, as he grew up little, not hardly, he met his Guru Maharaj, who was a very intimate associate of Lord Chaitanya. His name was Narahari Sarakar. We sing every evening about him. Narahari Adhikari Chavara Dulai. He's the one that fans Lord Chaitanya with Chavara on the bank of the river Ganga. And Narahari Sarakar, there are many wonderful stories about him. Lochan Das took shelter of him and went to the home of Narahari Sarakar, which was at Srikhanda. And there he was being trained in Krishna consciousness under his spiritual master. So the years went by, and he was so satisfied to serving his Guru. And gradually he grew up to be a young man. He was completely attached to just hearing and chanting and doing seva. But what happened is, the village of his wife, they were very disturbed, because now his wife was a young lady, and she didn't even know who her husband was. And they were married. And in India, there's no remarriages allowed, especially in those days of traditional Vedic culture. So this beautiful young lady, why should she be a widow? Why should she be living at the house of her parents? So they were very disturbed. So her parents, as well as all the senior elder people of that village, they came to Srikhanda. And they came to Narahari Sarakar's ashram. And they said that this boy, Lochan, he's your disciple, and we know he's completely surrendered to you, and he will do anything you say. He's married. He has a wife. She's living with her parents, even though she has a husband. She has no one to care for her now. Is it fair to her that she be a widow the rest of her life just because your disciple likes to be a brahmachari? You must send him home. So Narahari Sarakar, he told Lochan Das, you must go home and you must meet with your wife. So he went to the village. He had never even been to that village except on his wedding day. And he was just a little boy. He was only about 8 years old when he got married, something like that. So now he was a young man, so he went to the village, and there was a kund where there was water. And he saw a young lady drawing water from the kund. And he asked her, do you know where this particular house of this particular person is? And she said, yes, I know, it's over this way. So he said, thank you, Mataji. And then he followed the directions and went to the house of his father-in-law. And he met the father-in-law, and he met the mother-in-law, and then he was introduced to his wife. And he hadn't seen her since she's a little girl, so he had no idea what she was going to look like. And she happened to be the same girl that was drawing water from the lake. And he asked, where is the house? And she did not recognize him, nor he recognized her, but when she came home, they saw each other. So then he talked to her, and he said, what's spoken must be honored. And I called you Mataji. And you never call your wife Mataji, but I called you Mataji. I honored you as my mother. So therefore, this is the relation I have with you. I will just see you as an honorable mother. And in this way, he explained things to her so nicely that she actually gave her blessings that he go back to Narahari Sarakar's house. And as far as we know, I don't know if he ever met her after that. He stayed there, and under a particular tree, he wrote Sri Chaitanya Mangal, one of the great biographies of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that tree is still there. And just near that tree, in a beautiful, beautiful forest. Anyone who goes there is so charmed that they never want to leave. There's a little shrine just under beautiful, beautiful trees in the forest. And I'd like to tell you what happened at that shrine. About 1 kilometer from this place is the town of Srikanta. And in there are many nice little temples. One is the temple of Radha Gopinath. You have all heard the story of this deity Radha Gopinath. Narahari Sarakar's older brother's name was Mukunda Sarakar. And he had a son named Raghunandan Thakur. Now Mukunda Sarakar, he was the physician, the doctor for the king. And as a royal physician, he was often called for very special duties. One time, the king was sitting on a very high platform, sitting on the throne, and he called for Mukunda Sarakar to give him medical advice. So as he was talking to the king, one of the king's servants came with a peacock fan in order to shade the king from the sun. And when Mukunda Sarakar saw that peacock fan, he thought of Lord Krishna. And in ecstatic love, he became unconscious and fell all the way down off the raised platform to the ground. And the king, he was so fearful that he fell so far he may have lost his life. The king got off from his own seat and went down to the ground, and he lifted up Mukunda Sarakar, and Mukunda was just coming into consciousness, and he said, "Are you all right?" And Mukunda Sarakar said, "I am not hurt. It is all right." And the king said, "What happened to you?" Mukunda said, "I have a disease, something like epilepsy, and sometimes I faint like this." But the king understood, because he was very wise, that actually Mukunda was in ecstasy because of love for Krishna. So with great honor, the king offered his respects to Mukunda. And through the story we see how great devotees, they never ever like to portray themselves as great devotees. Neophyte devotees like to present themselves as very advanced. But great devotees, they want to simply present themselves as the humble servants of the Lord. And if even somehow or other, beyond their control, some of the advanced symptoms of their love of God come out, they do not try to boast about that, but rather they try to conceal it. Sometimes people in Vrindavan, in Navadvip, especially in holy places, we have seen they actually practice crying, and they teach their followers to practice crying. We have actually seen where they say, when you are having kirtan, you have to cry. So you have to just learn how to cry. And when you're hearing katha, you have to cry, because the Shastra says that if you don't cry, then you're not going to awaken love of God. That tears are like water that nourish the creeper of pure bhakti. So you must cry when you're chanting, and you must cry when you're hearing. And therefore, the goal of these people is to somehow cry. And they're just trying to get those tears to come out. And if you practice enough, you actually can become very expert at crying at any moment. I've seen Matajis who are expert. They're not even devotees. You have seen them. If they want their husbands or their boyfriends, whatever, if they want their attention, they just, all of a sudden tears come out. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll do anything for you. It's not that they're in Bhava, they're Mahabhagavats, it's just they know how to cry, that's all. And similarly, movie actors and movie actresses, they all learn the art of forcing themselves at any given moment to cry. So if you really try, you can be able to cry within a second in any situation. And as soon as there's Hari Katha, or as soon as there's Kirtan, tears start flowing like rivers. But Srila Prabhupada explains that these kinds of tears, they do not water the creeper of devotion. Rather, they wash away all the conclusions of the Vedas. Because the tears that water the creeper of devotion are tears that come from the heart due to genuine appreciation, humility, and love. And devotees don't like to show these signs, even if they have them, because they do not want people to think they're advanced. So Mukunda Sarakar, he wanted everyone to think that he was just a diseased person with a terrible condition of epilepsy. He didn't say, I fell to the ground because I was in ecstasy. He said, I fell to the ground because I was in epilepsy. Now, Mukunda Sarakar had a son whose name was Raghunandan Thakur. And Raghunandan, when he was just a little boy, he had extraordinary devotional qualities. So one time, Mukunda, he was called by the king for some service. And he wasn't going to be home to perform the offering to the deity of Radha Gopinath that is in their house. So he told Raghunandan that you should make the offering to the deity today. And this is how. You should say mantra and you should, with folded palms, put the food in front of Gopinath and you should pray, please, O Lord, please take this bhoga. So Raghunandan's mother prepared the plate and gave it to Raghunandan, and he was just a child. He brought the plate, placed it on the altar, bowed down to the deity, and then he started offering his prayers. Oh Gopinath, oh Gopal, please accept this offering. And after some time, he began to cry. And Gopinath saw him crying, and he wouldn't leave the altar. He was just crying. And he was saying, why don't you take the offering? Please take it. And Gopinath spoke to him. He said, I've already taken it. Raghunandan said, but it's still here. He said, I have taken it with my glance, and what is left is prasad. And Raghunandan said, I'm just a small boy. I don't know this philosophy about glances. All I know is my father told me to have you eat this, and you haven't eaten it. I'm so fallen. You're not willing to accept my offering. And he was crying and crying. So then Gopinath personally picked up everything with his hand and put it in his mouth and ate it. Hare Krishna. And then Raghunandan was very happy. He felt that he had fulfilled the order of his father, and he brought the plate off the altar and gave it to his mother. She said, where's the prasad? So when Mukunda Sarakar returned, Mataji approached her husband and said, I don't know what happened, but there's no prasad. Maybe Raghunandan ate it on the altar. Maybe some animal ate it. I don't know, but there was nothing on the plate. So Mukunda Sarakar, he understood his son was very extraordinary. So he inquired from him, Oh Raghunandan, please tell me, what happened to all the food that your mother put on Gopinath's plate? He said, what happened? You told me to ask him to eat, so I asked him, but he wouldn't eat it. So I began to cry, and then he spoke to me. He said, why you are crying? And I told him, because I want you to eat, so he ate. So Mukunda Sarakar said, I want you to make another offering. So he made another plate with laddu. And this time Mukunda was hiding in a place where no one could see him, but he could see the deity and he could see the sun. And Raghunandan came and offered the plate with the laddu. And again, Gopinath ate it with his glance. Because Brahma Samhita explains that every one of the limbs of the Lord can perform the duties of every other limb. Krishna can eat through his eyes. He can see through his mouth. He can taste through his nose. He can see through his hands. Any part of his body can perform any function of any other part. Because he is Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha. His body is eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. In his expansion of Mahavishnu, he can impregnate the entire material energy within the Mahatattva with all living beings simply by his glance. This is the power of the Lord. So this is the process in which Krishna spiritualizes the food that is offered to him. When a devotee offers patram pushpam palam toyam yomi bhakta prayachiti, when it is offered with devotion, he glances upon that food with his lotus eyes, and he eats, he enjoys the taste of the bhakti within that food. And after he tastes the bhakti, he doesn't taste simply the grains or the spices or the sugar or the vegetables. He tastes the ingredient of bhakti that is in it. And after he tastes that, then the whole preparation becomes prasad. It becomes spiritually energized by his mercy. And that mercy is so powerful and so pure that it can cleanse the heart and liberate one from all misconceptions and awaken love for Krishna. If prasad is approached with reverence and with proper understanding and devotion, especially then it will have the greatest effect, because it becomes non-different than Krishna. But it's so powerful, even if we don't know what it is, it will still have a great effect of reconnecting our consciousness with Krishna. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada said, prasad is our secret weapon. It is the means by which we can infiltrate anywhere, even amongst the most antagonistic, atheistic people. We can somehow or other induce them to make their connection to the path of bhakti if we give them prasad. Sometimes we make tricks with prasad. I remember one time I was in a situation where these people were so antagonistic to Krishna consciousness. And I had some prasad, and if I said that this is prasad, this is Krishna's mercy, they would have never accepted it. So I told them, please, my mother made this. And she will be so offended if you don't accept it. And nobody can refuse if your mother makes it. Of course, I wasn't lying, because all women are our mother, and some must have made it. So he ate it, and he became Krishna conscious. Hare Krishna. This is the power of prasad. So Gopinath glanced, and Raghunandan again started to cry. And he said, please Krishna, please Gopinath, please Gopal, please eat it. So then right in front of Mukunda Sarakar's eyes, Gopinath picked it up and ate half the lot. He said, I just had a big meal not long ago, so I will only take half now. And then that other half of the set is still there in one temple. Hare Krishna. So Mukunda Sarakar saw this, and he was struck with wonder what kind of devotion this little boy Raghunandan has. And soon the word started spreading that because of Raghunandan's devotion, Gopinath is actually eating the food that is offered to him. And the word spread amongst the Vaishnavas. And it came to one great associate of Lord Nityananda, whose name is Abhiram Thakur. You have all heard of Abhiram Thakur? He is a very powerful Vaishnava. He was so powerful, and he was so ecstatic, that sometimes when he was doing kirtan with Nityananda Prabhu, he would just enter into the mood of a cowherd boy and stand in a threefold bending form for 9 hours without moving, and all the devotees would just be chanting around him. In Krishna's Leela, he's Sridama, who is the younger brother of Srimati Radharani, and who is the very, very dear friend of Krishna Balaram. So Abhiram Gopal, he had a whip, and Abhiram wanted to test Srinivas. Hare Krishna. He wanted to see what kind of Vaishnava is this Srinivas. So he gave Srinivas a very small amount of money. He said, I want you to cook for yourself and eat at the bank of Ganga. So Srinivas took this little money and he was only able to get just enough to cook one portion for himself. And following the order of Abhiram, because he hadn't eaten anything, he went to Ganga, he took his bath, he made a little fire, and he cooked just enough for himself, and then he was making an offering to Radha and Krishna. And then Abhiram called two of his associates and told them that now you go to the Ganga bank and you ask Srinivas if he has any prasad. So these two men went to the Ganga and they met Srinivas. They didn't even ask him actually. They just greeted him, and Srinivas understood they were guests. So he immediately gave them whatever prasad was there. And they said, no, you take also. He said, no, you have. But there's only enough for one person. No, you must have. So he insisted and he gave them, and on their insistence he just took one small little portion. So they went back and they told Abhiram that he offered us all this food. And we insisted he take something, but he offered it all to us. So Abhiram said, yes, he is a Vaishnava. He is not concerned with his own welfare. He is concerned in serving other Vaishnavas. He's willing to put himself second to others. He's willing to suffer in order to serve. Just like today, Nrsimhananda Prabhu. He came to pick me up in his nice car. And according to the message, I was supposed to be ready at 3 o'clock. But I was not ready till 5:45. And when I was ready, I asked him, did you get any prasad today? He said, no. And I was in a place where there wasn't any prasad, hardly. So I asked him, can we find something for you? He said, no, I'm used to this. My Guru Maharaj has taught me like this. He said, I'm just happy driving you. Doesn't matter if I don't get any prasad. So I can tell Sachinandan Maharaj is something like Abhiram Thakur. He is teaching his followers this mood of selfless service. So when Srinivas came back, Abhiram was so pleased with his selfless mood of serving Vaishnavas that he took his whip, Jai Mangala, and he touched him with it. It's not he would beat people, he would just touch them. But that touching was like beating. So he hit one time, and when Srinivas was touched by the whip, he just went into ecstasy. And then Abhiram Thakur hit him again with the whip, and he went into even more ecstasy. And then he hit him again with the whip, and then he became even more ecstatic. And then Abhiram's wife, he said, please stop beating him. He's only a child. How much ecstasy can he contain? So this is his power. And he had another power. If he bowed down to a deity and the Lord wasn't personally accepting the offerings within that deity, the deity would crack. It would actually crack into so many pieces it became like powder. And if he bowed down and offered his obeisances to any stone other than a Shalagram Shila, then that stone would just crack into so many pieces it would become like powder. And if he would offer his obeisances to any human being, if that person even had one trace of material desire in his heart, the person would die. Hare Krishna. So when Abhiram found out that this little boy Raghunandan was giving Gopinath food and Gopinath was eating it, he wanted to go to Sri Khanda to see this Raghunandan and offer his obeisances to him. So Abhiram was on his way, and the news came to Sri Khanda that Abhiram is coming. He wants to offer his obeisances to Raghunandan. And Mukunda Sarakar was thinking, our son will die. So he was so fearful. The whole town of Sri Khanda was fearful because they loved Raghunandan. What are we going to do? So as Abhiram was approaching, they decided to hide him in a secret place, in some other house. And Abhiram came to the house and he said, I have come to see Raghunandan. And Mukunda Sarakar said, he's not in Sri Khanda. He's not home. So Abhiram, what could he do? He went to that place, the same place where Lochandas later wrote the Chaitanya Manga. In that little area, in beautiful forest, just outside of Sri Khanda, he just sat and was chanting japa. He was chanting for many hours. And Raghunandan Thakur, he was being hidden by his family members in another house to protect his life. But then he understood that a great devotee had come. So somehow Raghunandan escaped and he went to the forest. He was just a little boy. And he saw Abhiram Thakur sitting there and chanting. And then Raghunandan just came up to him with great humility and folded palms, and he offered obeisances to Abhiram Thakur. And then Abhiram Thakur, seeing that Raghunandan had come in great affection, he bowed down at the lotus feet of Raghunandan. And Raghunandan lived. That means that Raghunandan was a pure Vaishnava without a tinge of false ego or material desire. They both offered obeisances to each other. Abhiram Thakur began to embrace Raghunandan. And they both drenched each other with their tears. And then they both began to chant the holy names of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. And they both began to dance in ecstasy. And they were leaping and jumping and dancing and dancing and dancing. For hours they were dancing together in kirtan. And as they were dancing, the ankle bell that was on Raghunandan's ankle, it broke. And it flew several kilometers. That's how much he was dancing. And it entered into a kund, which is still there today. It is called Nupur Kund, the place where Raghunandan's ankle bell or Nupur fell into the lake. And the benediction is anyone who bathes in that lake will get very special love for Lord Krishna, as Raghunandan Thakur possessed. So Raghunandan Thakur, he took initiation from Narahari Sarakar, who was his uncle, his father's younger brother. And Narahari Sarakar was such a devotee. In Chaitanya Charitamrita it describes that every year the residents of Sri Khanda would go to Jagannath Puri from Bengal to celebrate Rath Yatra with Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya would divide the Rathiyatra Sankirtan into 7 groups. 4 was his own intimate associates, and then 1 was the group of devotees from Shantipur, the group from Kulinagram, and the group from Srikhanda. And the 3 leading devotees of Srikhanda was Mukunda Sarakar, Narahari Sarakar, and Raghunandan Thakur. So one day Lord Chaitanya asked Mukunda Sarakar that Raghunandan, is he your son or are you his son? And Mukunda Sarakar said that Raghunandan is my father and I am his son because he is the one that has inspired me in Krishna consciousness. And Lord Chaitanya was very pleased and he approved. And he said, yes, one who inspires us in our Krishna consciousness should be considered our father. And this is how we should honor anyone who inspires us in our Krishna consciousness. And then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave 3 special instructions to these 3 devotees of Srikhanda, which Srila Prabhupada explains, describes the essence of the duties of all devotees in the Krishna consciousness movement. First he said to Mukunda Sarakar that you should earn material and spiritual wealth. And then he said to Raghunandan that you should worship the deity. And then he told Narahari that you should stay here with my associates in Puri and you should preach. And Srila Prabhupada explains that these are the 3 different duties of Vaishnavas. One is if one is a family man with wife, children, it may be his prescribed duty to actually live in society, to have an occupation, to earn material wealth but use it in Krishna service, and to keep very, very good association in sadhana so you make great spiritual wealth as well. So this is one of the prescribed duties that Lord Chaitanya has given to grihastas. You live in your home, you have your family, you have your occupation, use your money for Krishna service, and hear and chant in the association of devotees. And to the other, to Raghunandan, he told him that you stay in the temple and you help in the worship of the deities. This is another prescribed duty for devotees to live within the temple, and they perform the puja of the deities and all of the associated service for the deities of the temple. And the other, Narahari Thakur, he told him, you stay amongst the sadhus, the Vaishnavas, and you preach. So, deity worship, living an exemplary grihasta life, and being a preacher. Srila Prabhupada explains, in Lord Chaitanya's eyes, all these 3 duties are equal if they are done in a spirit of devotion. We should not discriminate. We should understand that everyone, if they are performing their prescribed duty in the spirit of devotion, they are all to be respected as great Vaishnavas. So Narahari Sarakar, he lived in Jagannath Puri, and he became very, very best friends with Gadadhar Pandit. And they would often associate with Lord Chaitanya intimately together. And of course, we know Gadadhar Pandit, he was always reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. He was expert at describing the leelas and the philosophy of Bhagavatam. There were 3 associates of Lord Chaitanya in Puri that had very, very special, intense relationship with Lord Chaitanya due to their unique qualities. One was Swarup Damodar Goswami. His unique quality was his singing. He was always singing beautiful kirtans and bhajans about the Lord. And Lord Chaitanya could not give up his association. Swarup Damodar was constantly beside Lord Chaitanya as his personal secretary. In whatever particular mood he was in, Swarup Damodar would be given the intelligence by Lord Chaitanya to understand it, and he would sing just a corresponding song to increase his love. And if his love became too much, he would sing a song just to try to calm him down. But he knew exactly the spirit of his love. And Swarup Damodar Goswami, when he would sing, it was more beautiful than a Gandharva. It was filled with such intense love that one time Lord Chaitanya was with Swarup Damodar and the other devotees, and Swarup Damodar Goswami began to sing, and whenever he would sing, Lord Chaitanya would become in such ecstasy. Sometimes he would lose all external awareness of what was around him. Sometimes he would just start dancing, and he would go through thorny bushes, and his cloth would be torn, but he didn't even notice. Another time, he was dancing in such ecstasy that Lord Chaitanya fell in a deep, deep, dark, dry well. He was just dancing and dancing, and he just jumped in this well. And the devotees were so much afraid. They all went running, thinking the Lord may be hurt. The Lord, who knows what will happen to the beautiful body of the Lord. And when they went to the well, they got there, they saw that it was filled to the top with fresh, soft butter. Lord Chaitanya was floating in the butter. Nice. This was the power of Swarup Damodar Goswami's kirtan. And Paramananda Puri. Paramananda Puri was always immersed in meditating on Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya honored him and worshipped him and kept his association as being so dear because he was so immersed in Krishna consciousness through the process of meditation on the form, the name, the lila of the Lord. And also there was Gadadhar Pandit. His unique absorption was in discussing the topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Chaitanya every day would go to Tota Gopinath Mandir in Jagannath Puri. How many of you have been there to Tota Gopinath Temple in Puri? Lord Chaitanya would spend hours and hours every day just sitting there discussing Srimad Bhagavatam with Gadadhar Pandit. And Gadadhar Pandit has his Bhagavatam, and when he would recite it, he would cry. And his recitation would make Lord Chaitanya cry. And the combination of the tears of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda were just washing away the ink of the Bhagavatam of Gadadhar Pandit. And Lord Chaitanya couldn't listen enough to that recitation. Sometimes Gadadhar Pandit would discuss the pastimes of Prahlad or Dhruva, and Lord Chaitanya would say, "Say it again." Then he would start from the beginning and discuss the whole pastime of Dhruva Maharaj or Prahlad Maharaj, and Lord Chaitanya would say, "Say it again." Then he would discuss Prahlad's pastimes again from his birth in the womb all the way to the time of Nrsimhadev and everything in between. And Lord Chaitanya would say, "Say it again." Sometimes 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times in a row he would the same story, and Lord Chaitanya, "Say it again." This is the nectar of the Bhagavatam. This is how great souls relish it. Neophyte devotees, we hear it once, and then if somebody says it again, we say, no, I already heard that. I already know that story. Tell me something new. But the great souls, they want to hear again and again and again and again. The more you hear it, the more realization, the more ecstatic association you have with those divine personalities that are manifesting themselves through the spiritual power of transcendental sound vibration. So Narahari Sarakar was a very dear associate of the Gadadhar Pandit, and he was one of the dearmost loving servants of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he wrote beautiful, beautiful songs glorifying Lord Chaitanya as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So after Lord Chaitanya left this world, and Nityananda Prabhu left this world, Gadadhar Pandit left this world, and sort of Damodar left this world, and Raghunandan Rai left this world. So many of the associates of Lord Chaitanya left just after him because they could not bear the separation. Somehow or other, by the arrangement of the Lord, Narahari Sarakar was still living. And he became such a senior devotee that all devotees were going to him to just get relief from their separation by being with him, because he was such a senior and dear associate of Lord Chaitanya. And he was such a compassionate, loving friend of all devotees. And he had a beautiful deity called Prana Gauranga. And this deity of Lord Chaitanya, he worshipped with so much love and devotion. Especially in separation from Lord Chaitanya. It was his only source of life, was seeing the Lord in this beautiful form. And that deity is still there in Srikhanda, Prana Gauranga. Beautiful, beautiful Lord. Have any of you? Oh, you haven't seen. You must see, please. Your life will not be the same after you see this Lord. He's dancing. And Narottam Das Thakur accepted Narahari Sarakar like a Shiksha Guru. Srinivasacharya, Shamananda, Janava Devi would meet with him often in Srikhanda. So some years later, Narahari Sarakar left this world in Srikhanda. And Raghunandan Thakur, his disciple, was beside himself in grief. And when the news reached all the devotees, they were all broken-hearted. Janava Devi and Achyutananda, Srinivas and Shamananda and Narottam, whatever remaining Vaishnavas, they were just broken-hearted. And Raghunandan Thakur decided on the first anniversary of the disappearance of Narahari Sarakar to invite all the Vaishnavas to come to have a wonderful celebration in honor of him. So he sent out the invitations, and devotees from all around came. One of the great devotees that came was the son of Nityananda Prabhu, Virachandra, and the son of Advaitacharya, Achyutananda, and of course Narottam and Shamananda and all these great souls. And Raghunandan Thakur, he greeted everyone with such humility that he utterly charmed the hearts of all the devotees. They were just showering their blessings upon him. Although Srikhanda was a simple village, he made so many wonderful, nice arrangements for all of them. And he welcomed them with garlands and with sandalwood paste and with prasad. And he took such special loving care of each and every devotee. Not only the big, big Mahants who were the associates of Lord Chaitanya like Bir Chandra or the associates of Nityananda Prabhu, but also the most insignificant disciples of the Lord's associates. He treated them all with such honor and such affection. From the great souls to the most newly arriving bhaktas, he served them. And then he had Srinivasacharya recite Srimad Bhagavatam from morning till evening, and everyone was very happy to hear. And then in the evening, this is the evening before Narahari Sarakar's disappearance day, he had big kirtan. And all the devotees were gathered together. And they began the kirtan by actually worshipping all the instruments. They performed proper worship to the mridanga and the kartals, and then all the devotees who were playing them, and then all the devotees that were singing, and then they started the kirtan. Hare Krishna. And they were dancing and chanting, and Raghunandan Thakur was dancing and chanting, and Birbhadra was dancing and chanting. Everyone was, when Birbhadra was dancing, he was dancing so beautifully that he was completely captivating the hearts of everyone. The son of Lord Nityananda Prabhu in ecstasy was dancing and dancing and dancing, and there was a blind man. And he heard everybody in such happiness celebrating the dance of Birbhadra. He said, "What's happening? Who is it that's dancing?" And someone said, "It is Bir Chandra, the son of Nityananda. He is dancing so beautifully." And this blind man began to pray at the lotus feet of Bir Chandra. "Please, I don't desire anything of this world. Let me just for a moment see your dance." Now this person was blind from birth, and he was very old. And just as he was offering that prayer, Bir Chandra, who was all-powerful, he was the incarnation of Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, he gave that person the power to see. And he opened his eyes, and there he saw the beautiful dancing form of Bir Chandra. And he began to dance in ecstasy. "I have seen, I have seen." And everybody, upon seeing the blind man watching and dancing in ecstasy and seeing Bir Chandra, they all began to dance. And they all began to celebrate and glorify the great power of Bir Chandra. So this made the kirtan even more sweet. And as the kirtan was going till the late hours of the night, the devotees started feeling separation from Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, and their associates. And they began to pray. They began to pray for the association of the Lord. And in this mood, the kirtan actually entered into the moods of deep separation. And as they were singing and dancing, it became so intense with devotion that right before everyone's eyes in the temple of Narahari Sarakar, this kirtan was taking place right for the pleasure of the deity of Pranagoranga. They were all worshipping that deity of Pranagoranga and dancing and dancing and dancing together, and in such separation, to everyone's great happiness, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates appeared before them and all began to dance with them. And the devotees, the heights of their transcendental joy reached no bounds as Mahaprabhu himself appeared after years of being disappeared from this world. When they saw his beautiful golden form dancing with them, smiling upon them and glancing upon them, their innermost desires were completely fulfilled. Most of these devotees had never seen Lord Chaitanya. They were the disciples of the disciples of the disciples of Lord Chaitanya. And some of them had seen, but not for so many long years. This beautiful kirtan is a great famous legend within Gaudiya Vaishnava history. And then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates disappeared. And everyone was simultaneously in ecstasy of what they had seen and in the agony of separation of what they had just lost. And this kirtan went all the way up until Mangalarti. And then they performed the Mangalarti and waved beautiful lamps before the effulgent form of Sri Pranagoranga deity. And then, that was on Ekadasi. We would like to celebrate Dwadasi by taking Pranagaranga's prasad. Hare Krishna. So Raghunandan Thakur decided to make a wonderful feast for all of them. And he had all the cooks and the devotees of Sri Khanda making very, very nice preparations. He also was preparing nice preparations. And he offered it all to Pranaguranga, and he began to offer it to the devotees. And the devotees were astounded. There were so many varieties of cakes and grains and rice and sabjis and fruits and chutneys, and everything tasted so nectarine. It was all prepared with so much love and devotion. They were praising Raghunandan because he had such enthusiasm to serve the devotees. And as the Mahants were eating, Raghunandan Thakur decided to offer this food to his Guru Maharaj, because there was a little place which was the Bhajan Kutir, the sitting place of Narahari Sarakar. So Raghunandan, as the Mahants were taking the prasad, he took that same prasad of Pranaguranga and brought it to his Guru Maharaj's sitting place. And he took the prasad there and he put it where his Guru would sit. And in great feelings of separation from his Guru Maharaj, he chanted the mantra to offer it to him. Then he closed the door and came outside of this little room. And he waited some time. And then he opened the door. And when he opened the door, what he saw was Narahari Sarakar in his divine spiritual body, sitting in his sitting place, eating the prasad. Narahari Sarakar ki! And Raghunandan, upon seeing this, tears of ecstatic love began to just flow from his eyes as he saw his Guru Maharaj again, eating the prasad. Then Narahari Sarakar disappeared, and Raghunandan took that Mahaprasad, and he ate that Mahaprasad of his Guru, and he distributed it. He had no time for much ecstasy, because he was still serving the other devotees. He just ran quickly to make this offering. And he just saw his Guru Maharaj, and then he took the prasad, then he ran back and started serving the Mahants once again. And they were all praising his wonderful, wonderful qualities. Such a humble servant. And in this way, the festival of the disappearance of Narahari was so wonderfully observed by Raghunandan and the Vaishnavas. So these are some stories about Sri Khanda. Hare Krishna.